Okay, so our last piece is this concept of observational learning, which is the ability of learning by observing others, right? Hence why it's called observational learning. You might hear it referred to as modeling, which is we use respectable people in our society as models. We observe their behavior and we copy their behavior. So that's modeling. Uh, Interesting to note, we learn from their consequences as well. So if we have an adult figure or a model that gets some kind of positive outcome, they're going to be more likely to copy that because it led to a positive outcome. If the whoever is serving as a model gets a negative consequence, we learn that their consequence could be ours. The best example of that is, imagine you're driving on the highway and you see someone speed past you and get pulled over and get a ticket. Are you going to be more or less likely to speed? The answer is simple. You're going to be less likely to speed. And why is it? Because you saw the other person get pulled over. And you learn that just like they could get pulled over, you could too. So that's observational learning, modeling. Now, when modeling occurs, there's something called mirror neurons in the frontal lobe that are active, right? So anytime we observe and emulate the behavior of others, these neurons in the frontal lobe are going to fire. I said there's another word for observational learning, which is called vicarious learning or learning from others. So you'll see these three terms linked to observational learning. Now, if we were to look at mirror neurons firing, we can see reaction to pain and empathy as it relates to observing other people in pain or expressing empathy or emulating it as well. Now, there is a famous Bobo doll study. Bobo doll is an inflatable clown. Albert Bandura and his colleagues did this research in which they wanted to see the impact of observing aggression and copying aggression. So they had three groups of children. One group of children observed an adult figure. We'll call that person the model, and they were abusing Bobo. Now, when you see what they did, it wasn't all that crazy, right? They would lift Bobo up, throw him in the air, or do like some rigid kick. Another group saw an adult figure ignore Bobo. And then we had a control group that didn't see any interaction between an adult model and Bobo at all. And what we found was those children who observed the adult figure engaging in aggression, they became more likely to copy those aggressive acts to the inflatable clown when they were in the playroom than all other groups. Now, what's interesting is that this playroom had all kinds of toys. It had toys that could be constructive. It had toys that were not linked to aggression. It had toys that were linked to violence. And then we saw what the kids did. Not only did those children who observed aggression copy it, but they engaged in other forms of aggression as well, which we will see. So let me pull this video up and we'll talk about it afterwards.
Segment you're about to see is taken from an early experiment on learning of aggressive styles of behavior through modeling. Children watched a filmed adult perform novel aggressive acts toward a inflated doll, and the physical aggression was accompanied by novel, hostile remarks. We later measured how much of this modeled aggression the children had learned just by watching. Now, the measurement of learning of aggression uses simulated targets rather than live ones. For example, to test how well bombardiers have learned bombing strategies, you would use simulated targets rather than require them to bomb San Francisco or New York. The model pummeled the doll with the mallet, flung it in the air, kicked it repeatedly, threw it down, and beat it. It was once widely believed that seeing others vent aggression would drain the viewer's aggressive drive. As you can see, exposure to aggressive modeling is hardly cathartic. Exposure to aggressive modeling increased attraction to guns, even though it was never modeled. Guns had less appeal to children who had no exposure to the aggressive modeling. The children also picked up the novel hostile language. The room contained varied play materials, and children could choose to play aggressively or non-aggressively. The children devised new ways of hitting the doll. Now, the object of interest was the novel aggressive acts, not punching the doll. Children in the control group who had no exposure to the aggressive modeling never exhibited the novel forms of aggression. Here's a creative embellishment. A doll becomes a weapon of assault.
So what's interesting about that video is you could see Bandura showed you what the model did. They showed very, I mean, basic forms of aggression. And then when putting the children in the playroom, those people who saw that, not only did they do a direct copy of aggression, but they engage in all kinds of novel aggression, like you saw um, the boy take a gun to the inflatable clown, or the girl take a doll. And so this sheds light as to how we copy aggression, right? So when we observe aggressive acts, which we observe a ton of them in our childhood through cartoons and Power Rangers and all kinds of things, it affects us. Now that isn't to say that every time a person watches something aggressive, they're going to become aggressive. But the cumulative effect could be at play. So now, younger children, here's an interesting finding about observing violence and violent play. Younger children actually do more direct copy. So if you watch wrestling and you go to a playground, it's not uncommon to play WWE, right? Or if you're doing Power Rangers, it's not uncommon to physically, roughhouse. But as we get older, we don't do direct copies, right? So we become more indirect or novel in terms of aggression, right? So it's something to think about. In terms of observing aggression and watching television, we see that in general, males tend to be more aggressive than females, but even whether they have prior aggression or not, all groups increase their engagement of aggressive acts with more television. So it's pretty cool. So you could argue, oh, males are more aggressive than females inherently, or oh, there's a bias that some people have a history of aggression. Taking all of four of these things into consideration, we see in all groups that there's a significant increase between those watching less than 1 hour of television versus uh, 3 hours or more. Now, that to me, does that mean we should take our television sets and throw them out the window and never watch television? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we have to be mindful what we put on for our kids. And we do have the ability to put on more positive observational learning. And if we put on positive models, that's going to be copied as well. So, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood back in the day, or Bluey today, are good examples of children's programming that focus on constructive, positive behavior versus maladaptive or violent behavior. So, that is our lesson on behaviorism and observational learning. So we play a very critical role in teaching our children and serving as models for our children and other people around us. And we have to take it very, very, very much to heart, because those people who look up to us are going to emulate us. And I think that's a good place to stop for today.